What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to talk about The Long Goodbye, directed by Robert Altman. I think it's one of my favorite movies, but it's also just one of the coolest movies and has one of the coolest characters in film history, and I want to talk about it. The Long Goodbye is a mystery crime detective kind of film, directed in 1973. It is adapted from the novel by the same name, written by Raymond Chandler, who's done a lot of big novels that ended up being on screen, like The Big Sleep and some other ones as well. This is where the famous character of Phil Marlowe is introduced to us in Raymond Chandler's fictional novels. Elliot Gould really plays Phil Marlowe perfectly. Not identical to how he behaves in the novel, but on screen, Elliot really does something great because it really comes through that this is just a cool character with a certain presence and aura about him. The way he walks, the way he talks, what he thinks about, and how he says things, all just makes it work. The overall premise of the film is Elliot Gould, Phil Marlowe, is a private investigator who gets himself into a case that becomes more than he thought it was to begin with. The overall feel of this movie is what makes it really enjoyable. It's not a film where you have to really focus on the plot. Not that it doesn't matter, but there's just so much more than the plot. What it really does well, and what it really gives off, is an impression of what it feels like to be in the 70s in California. We watch hippies figuring out things like yoga, baking hash brownies, meditating, and just figuring out a different way of life. We even get an appearance from young Arnold Schwarzenegger, jacked to the gills as a young guy, which can't be more California than anything else. And of course there's the blonde with the beach house that drags our hero into this whole thing in the first place. Similar to my review in Inherent Vice, this film really doesn't focus on a whodunit as much as how it's done and the process that it took to get there. Like I said earlier, it's not the plot that is the main focus of the movie, it's just an aspect of it. It all comes together because of the overall feel, as well as the soundtrack and the cars, the clothing. There's also some interesting commentary with lots of famous quotables regarding success, finances, as well as morality and relationships. So our character is really cool, and that is played really well by Elliot Gould and shown really well by Robert Altman. But although not much throws our character off his cool, there are certain standards and lines that you shouldn't cross, and that's shown very well in the movie as well. The Long Goodbye is another one of these movies where you just have to sit back and let the adventure take itself where it wants to, without you having to pinpoint and figure out all the details. Just sit back and watch Phil Marlowe be Phil Marlowe. If you are a true fan of detective films, or the noir genre in general, this may not be the movie for you. But I really do think that this movie offers something on top of, or something else than those movies traditionally do. And if that's something that would turn you off towards the movie, that's one thing, but it could also just make it that much better. Because it still is a detective film. We're still watching Phil Marlowe be a private investigator, take us from A to Z, and we watch his unraveling of the case. We do meet a lot of characters that come out the blue, and that just makes the movie a little bit more exciting. It takes you in directions that you might not expect. It's definitely not something that you could predict from adding up context clues and, this and that. If you watch closely, you realize that each of the characters that pop up in the movie, which is plenty, all have something to give. What I mean by that is they all represent different viewpoints or perspectives. This movie is very subtle about the themes it possesses, but they are there. You just have to watch close enough. I also want to add that this is a really good movie to start with if you want to study Robert Altman. It's simple, it's not overly complex, but it also has all the Robert Altman elements, which I love, and I'm sure you guys will as well. He is one of the top directors of all time, and this is just a good starting point. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this little brief breakdown. If you haven't seen The Long Goodbye, please watch it, and if you have, then I hope you're going to watch it again.